The Galactic Council had seen thousands of species, warriors made of living stone, hive minds that spoke in perfect logic, civilizations that could bend gravity like it was nothing. So when humans arrived, nobody was impressed. The chamber of the council was massive, a floating ring of silver platforms surrounding a glowing star map. Every seat was filled with ambassadors from the most powerful empires in the galaxy, and in the smallest platform stood a single human. Ambassador Daniel Carter. He looked ordinary and armored, no weapons. Just a simple black uniform and tired eyes. Across the chamber, the Varkal warlord leaned forward, his armored claws tapping loudly against the metal rail. "This is the species requesting protection," he said, his deep voice echoing across the chamber. That a few ambassadors laughed. The Varkal were famous conquerors. Their empire had crushed dozens of worlds. Compared to them, humans looked fragile. Daniel didn't react. Instead, he calmly placed a small data device on the table. "I'm not requesting protection," he said quietly. The laughter grew louder. One of the insect-like diplomats tilted its head. "Then why are you here, human?" Daniel looked around the chamber slowly to the mocking faces, the alien species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Then he said something that made the entire room pause. "I'm here to warn you." Silence spread across the council. Warnings were rare in the Galactic Council. Most civilizations came asking for alliances or begging for help. Not warnings. The tall, blue-skinned ambassador of the Cellari leaned forward. "Warning us about what?" Daniel tapped the device once. Above the center of the chamber, the glowing star map changed. Several systems near the outer edge of the galaxy suddenly turned dark. The room filled with confused murmurs. One of the council scientists spoke first. "That must be an error. Those stars were active just days ago." Daniel shook his head. "It's not an error." The Varkal warlord snorted. "Stars do not simply disappear, human." Daniel finally looked directly at him. "They do," he said quietly, "when something eats them." The entire chamber went silent. For the first time, nobody laughed. The Cellari ambassador narrowed his glowing eyes. "You expect us to believe that something is consuming entire star systems?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pressed the device again. The star map zoomed out. More dark systems appeared. 10, then 20, then 50, to each one a place where a star had once existed. A cold feeling spread through the council chamber. Even the Varkal warlord stopped smiling. "Impossible," someone whispered. Daniel folded his hands calmly. "My people discovered it 3 years ago." The insect ambassador clicked nervously. "And you're only telling us now?" Daniel's voice became colder. "We try to warn your border fleets." The council members looked at each other. Records of such warnings existed. Daniel continued. "But none of you answered." The chamber was quiet now. Laughter. Mocking. Just tension. Finally, the Varkal warlord spoke again. "And what exactly is this thing?" Daniel looked at the dark star systems floating in the hologram. His expression became serious. "We call them the Void Eaters." A ripple of unease moved across the council. "Ancient machines," Daniel continued. "Older than every civilization in this room." The Cellari ambassador spoke slowly. "And they destroy stars?" Daniel nodded. "They consume energy on a scale we barely understand." The insect diplomat clicked its mandibles nervously. "If this is true, why has no one seen them?" Daniel looked around the chamber one more time. Then he said the words that made the entire council freeze. "Because anyone who sees them," he paused, "doesn't survive." The silence in the chamber was now heavy. Finally, the Varkal warlord laughed again, though it sounded forced this time. "Convenient story, human." Daniel sighed. "I expected that response." He pressed the device one last time. The star map changed again. This time the image showed something new. A fleet. Hundreds of strange black shapes moving slowly through space. And behind them, another star went dark. The council watched in horror as the light faded. Daniel spoke quietly. "They're only 2 weeks away from your territory." Nobody laughed now. The Cellari ambassador whispered. "How long before they reach Earth?" Daniel looked directly at the council. Then he gave an answer that made the entire chamber go completely silent. "They already did." The council chamber was completely silent. Not the quiet of confusion, not the quiet of disbelief. This was the quiet of fear. The words "evacuate humanity" echoed in every ambassador's mind. For the first time since the Galactic Council had been formed thousands of years ago, its members were facing something none of them had prepared for: an enemy that did not negotiate, did not conquer, did not communicate. It simply erased stars. The Cellari ambassador was the first to speak again. His voice was, "Careful now. You are telling us your species is ready to abandon its home system." Daniel Carter nodded once. "If we have to." The Varkal warlord stared at him. "Your entire civilization?" "Yes." The insect diplomat clicked its mandibles nervously. "That would require moving billions of individuals." Daniel corrected him. "Trillions." The chamber stirred again. The Cellari ambassador looked shocked. "Your population is not that large." Daniel shook his head slightly. "Not on Earth." He tapped the device again. A new hologram appeared above the council floor. It showed the Sol system once more, but this time the image zoomed outward, farther than before, past Mars, past Jupiter, past the outer planets. And then the council saw something they had never noticed: cities, massive artificial habitats floating throughout the system, gigantic rotating rings, orbital colonies, mining worlds carved in asteroids. The insect diplomat whispered. "You expanded into your entire system," Daniel nodded. "Humans spread out quickly when we realized what was coming." The Cellari ambassador looked stunned. "You built an entire civilization across your star system in just a few years." Daniel shrugged slightly. "Fear is a powerful motivator." The Varkal warlords studied the map. "So, if your evacuation plan is ready, why come here?" Daniel looked directly at the council. "Because the Void Eaters are not only coming for us." He zoomed the map out again. Back to the galaxy, back to the trail of dead stars. "They're moving toward the center of the galaxy." The Cellari ambassador whispered. "That path goes directly through council territory." Daniel nodded. "Yes." The insect diplomat's voice trembled slightly. "How many civilizations will be destroyed if they continue?" Daniel didn't answer with words. He simply activated another simulation. The hologram showed the path of the machines, star after star disappearing, worlds vanishing, entire civilizations erased. Within seconds, the simulation counted the losses: 200 star systems, then 400, then 1,000. The council watched in silence. The Varkal warlord spoke slowly. "You are saying this swarm could wipe out half the galaxy?" Daniel looked at him. "Yes." The chamber fell quiet again. Finally, the Cellari ambassador asked the question that had been forming in every mind. "What do you want from us, human?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "Help." The word surprised many of them. The insect diplomat tilted its head. "You already built a defense grid, a massive fleet, and a containment trap." "Yes." "Then why ask us for help?" Daniel looked around the chamber. The powerful empires, the fleets and armies that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Then he gave them the truth. "Because we don't know if it will be enough." The honesty in his voice made the chamber even more uncomfortable. The Varkal warlord finally stood up. His massive armored body towered over the council floor. "How soon before these machines reach your system again?" Daniel activated the map one more time. The swarm moved slowly across the stars. "They are already here." The room froze. Daniel zoomed the image toward the Sol system. The council saw something new: a massive wave of black shapes approaching the human defense grid. Thousands of them, far more than machines humans had trapped before. The insect diplomat whispered in horror. "That is not a fleet." Daniel finished the sentence quietly. "It's a harvest group." The hologram showed the defense wall around the human system: 90,000 platforms glowing with energy, preparing for impact. The Varkal warlord asked one final question. "When will they attack?" Daniel looked at the timer appearing on the hologram. Numbers slowly counting down. Then he answered, "Now." At that exact moment, the hologram flashed red. Alerts filled the chamber. The simulation changed to a live feed from the Sol system. The council watched as the first Void Eater reached the human defense wall. The ancient machine moved like a living shadow, black metal surfaces unfolding slowly, energy gathering around it. Then it fired at a beam of pure energy struck one of the human defense platforms. The platform exploded instantly, the chamber filled with gasps, but then something unexpected happened. The rest of the defense grid activated. Thousands of human platforms fired at once. Bright lines of energy crossed space. Gravitational traps snapped into place. The attacking machine slowed, then stopped, locked inside a glowing containment field. The council watched in stunned silence. Then another machine arrived. Then 10, then 100. The wall of human defenses lit up like a burning star. War had begun. The Salari ambassador whispered, "Your wall is holding." Daniel didn't look relieved. Instead, he stared at the growing swarm on the hologram. More machines were arriving every second. Hundreds, then thousands. The defense grid struggled to contain them. Several platforms exploded. Others overloaded. The Varkal warlord asked quietly, "How long will your wall last?" Daniel looked at the numbers appearing on the screen. Then he answered calmly, "Less than 20 hours." The chamber fell silent again. 20 hours. That was all the time the human defense grid had left. The Salari ambassador spoke slowly, and when it falls, Daniel's voice remained steady. "Then we activate the trap." The council watched the battle raging in the Sol system, and for the first time in their long history, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy realized something terrifying. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for years, but even they didn't know if it would be enough because the swarm of Void Eaters approaching their system was still growing. The words Plan B hung in the air like a shadow over the council chamber, and O1 spoke. For centuries, the Galactic Council had believed one thing above all else: an single civilization could control the fate of the galaxy. But now a young species, barely noticed a few decades ago, was calmly explaining that they had multiple plans to stop something that consumed stars. The Varkal warlord leaned forward slowly. His voice was no longer mocking. "What is Plan B, human?" Daniel Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he deactivated the star map. The chamber grew slightly darker. For a moment, the only light came from the distant stars visible through the massive observation window behind the council. Daniel looked at them quietly. Then he spoke. "First, you need to understand something about humans." The insect diplomat tilted its head. "And what would that be?" Daniel turned back toward the council. "We are very good at preparing for disasters." Some ambassadors exchanged confused looks. The Salari ambassador frowned. "Many species prepare for threats." Daniel nodded. "Yes." Then he added something that made several members uncomfortable. "But humans assume the worst possible outcome." The Varkal warlord crossed his arms. "You're saying you expected to fight machines capable of destroying stars?" Daniel shook his head slightly. "No," he paused. "We expected to lose." That answer shocked the room. The Salari ambassador spoke slowly. "You build a massive defense grid, expecting it to fail?" Daniel gave a small nod. "Yes." The insect diplomat clicked its mandibles nervously. "That makes no logical sense." Daniel smiled faintly. "It does if you study human history." The chamber stayed silent. Daniel continued. "For thousands of years, our species faced disasters. Global wars, extinction threats, planetary destruction scenario." He tapped the device again. A new hologram appeared above the chamber. This one did not show star systems. It showed Earth. But something about the image was strange. Large structures surrounded the planet. Massive shipyards, orbital factories, thousands of ships. The council stared at it. The Salari ambassador whispered, "That fleet." Daniel nodded. "Yes." The Varkal warlord narrowed his eyes. "How many ships is that?" Daniel zoomed the image closer. Rows and rows of human vessels filled space around Earth. Warships, carriers, strange designs no one in the council recognized. Daniel answered calmly. 300,000. The chamber exploded into noise again. "That is impossible. No economy could support a fleet that size." "You are lying." Daniel simply waited. Eventually, the shouting stopped. Then he spoke again. "We started building them 2 years ago." The insect diplomat froze. 2 years? Daniel nodded. "Every shipyard on Earth, every orbital factory, every mining colony in our system. He zoomed the hologram out. Now the council could see the entire Sol system. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, asteroid belts. Everywhere ships were being constructed, massive fleets forming in silence. The Cellari ambassador looked stunned. You mobilize your entire civilization. Daniel's voice was calm. Yes. The Varkal warlord stared at the image. But why build a fleet if your defense wall already trapped the machines? Daniel looked directly at him. Because the wall is not meant to win. The room went quiet again. It's meant to slow them down. The insect diplomat whispered. So the fleet is your real weapon. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, more silence. The Cellari ambassador looked confused. If not the fleet, then what? Daniel pressed the device again. The hologram changed one more time. This time the image showed something far away from Earth. Deep in the outer solar system, a dark region beyond Pluto. The council stared at the strange structure floating there. It was enormous. Bigger than anything they had ever seen, and a massive ring-like machine surrounding a small artificial star. Energy flowed through it in glowing streams. The Varkal warlord frowned. What is that? Daniel looked at it quietly. Then he said two words, a trap. The insect diplomat's voice trembled slightly. For the Void Eaters? Daniel nodded. Yes. The Cellari ambassador leaned closer. How could a single machine stop something that consumed stars? Daniel zoomed the image closer. The council finally understood why the structure was so enormous that IT wasn't just a machine, IT was a gateway. Energy bent space around it. Stars in the background warped slightly. The insect diplomat whispered in shock. A spatial distortion field, Daniel nodded. Yes. The Cellari ambassador's eyes widened. You build a wormhole generator. Daniel corrected him. Not exactly. He paused. Then he said the words that made the council realize just how dangerous humans really were. We built a one-way door. The chamber fell silent again. The Varkal warlord stared at the machine. Where does it lead? Daniel answered quietly. To a place with no stars, no planets, no energy, just endless empty space. The insect diplomat whispered, a cosmic graveyard. Daniel didn't deny it. The plan is simple, he said. When the machines break through the defense wall, we lure them into the trap. The Cellari ambassador asked the obvious question. And then? Daniel's voice became colder. Then we close the door. The council stared at him, realizing the scale of what humans had prepared at a prison. Large enough to trap star-eating machines in a region of space where they could never feed again. The Varkal warlord finally asked the question no one else dared to say. And if the plan fails? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly turned toward the observation window behind the council. Outside, thousands of stars glittered across the galaxy. Beautiful, peaceful, unaware of the danger approaching. Daniel finally spoke. If the trap fails, he paused. Then we activate Plan C. The Cellari ambassador whispered. And what is Plan C? Daniel turned back toward the council. His expression was completely serious now. Then he said something that made even the most powerful empires in the galaxy feel a sudden chill. Evacuate humanity. Silence. Then Daniel added one final sentence. And take the fight to them instead. For several long seconds, nobody in the council chamber moved. The glowing star map floated silently above them, showing the black shapes drifting through space like a swarm of silent predators. The Varkal warlord was the first to break the silence. That is impossible, he growled. His massive claws dug into the railing. Your world is still there. Several council members nodded quickly. They had records, scans, observations. Earth was alive and stable. Its stars still burned bright. Daniel Carter didn't argue. Instead, he leaned back slightly and folded his hands. Yes, he said calmly. It is. The Cellari ambassador frowned. If these machines already reach your system, then why does your star still exist? Daniel looked up at the hologram again. His eyes were calm, but there was something heavy behind them. Because, he said quietly, we stopped them. The reaction was immediate. The entire council erupted. Voices overlapped in disbelief. That's absurd. Impossible. No civilization can stop something that consumes stars. The insect diplomat clicked its mandibles rapidly. You expect us to believe your young species defeated ancient machines capable of devouring suns? Daniel raised one hand. Slowly, the noise in the chamber faded. We didn't defeat them, he said. That answer confused everyone even more. The Cellari ambassador leaned forward. Then what exactly happened, human? Daniel tapped the device again. The star map shifted. Now it showed the Sol system that Earth's bright yellow star glowed peacefully at the center. But surrounding the system was something new, a ring. Thousands of small objects floating in perfect formation around the entire star system. The council stared at it. What is that? Someone asked. Daniel answered simply, a wall. More silence. The Varkal warlord laughed again, but this time there was clear irritation in his voice. You build a wall in space? Daniel nodded, a defensive grid. The insect diplomat tilted its head. That structure would require unimaginable resources. Yes, Daniel said. In time, the Cellari ambassador's glowing eyes narrowed. How long have you been preparing for this? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked around the chamber again. The ancient empires, the civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Then he spoke. Long before we joined the Galactic Council. That answer sent a wave of whispers through the chamber. Humans had only entered galactic politics a few decades ago. Before that, they were considered an isolated developing species, primitive, unimportant. The Varkal warlord crossed his arms. You expect us to believe your species secretly built a structure around an entire star system? Daniel shrugged slightly. You're welcome to scan it. The Cellari ambassador turned to the council scientists. Run verification. Within seconds, several holographic consoles lit up across the chamber. Advanced sensors began analyzing the Sol system. The room slowly filled with quiet tension. Then one of the scientists spoke. His voice sounded shaken. The structure is real. Another scientist added quickly, it's enormous. The insect diplomat leaned forward. How enormous? The scientist hesitated before answering. There are over 90,000 defense platforms. The chamber went completely still. Even the Varkal warlord looked stunned. Daniel continued calmly. Each one carries gravitational anchors, energy siphons, and containment fields. The Cellari ambassador spoke slowly. You built weapons designed to fight something that eats stars. Daniel nodded once. Yes. The insect diplomat's voice lowered. And when the machines arrived, Daniel looked back at the map. The Void Eaters entered our system 2 years ago. The star map zoomed into the simulation began playing. Strange black structures drifting toward Earth's star. Massive, silent, terrifying. Several council members shifted nervously. Then the simulation showed the human defense grid activating. Thousands of platforms lighting up at once. Beams of energy stretching across space. Gravity wells forming like invisible traps. The machine slowed, then stopped. The room watched in silence. Daniel spoke quietly. They tried to reach our sun. The simulation showed the machines pushing forward, slowly, relentlessly. Then the defense grid changed. New energy fields formed around the machines, layers of containment, locking them in place. The Cellari ambassador whispered, You trapped them? Daniel nodded, for now. The insect diplomat looked horrified. You mean they're still alive? Daniel didn't look away from the hologram. Yes. A chill moved through the chamber. The Varkal warlord spoke carefully this time. How many of these machines did you stop? Daniel zoomed the simulation out. The council saw the answer instantly. Dozens of black shapes trapped inside the defensive grid. Massive ancient constructs frozen in space. The insect diplomat's voice trembled. And the rest? Daniel slowly zoomed the star map out again. Back to the galaxy. Back to the dark systems. Then he spoke the words that made every ambassador in the chamber feel cold. That he pointed at the swarm moving toward the council's territory. Is the rest? Silence filled the chamber again. The Cellari ambassador finally asked the question everyone was thinking. If your defenses stopped them, why are you here? Daniel looked directly at the council. His expression was serious now. Because our wall won't hold forever. The chamber went quiet. Those machines are learning. Daniel continued. They are adapting. The insect diplomat whispered. How long do you have? Daniel took a slow breath. Then he gave the answer, 6 months. No one spoke. 6 months. That was nothing on a galactic scale. The Varkal warlord stared at the star map. For the first time in centuries, the conqueror of dozens of worlds looked uncertain. Finally, he asked one simple question. What happens when they break through? Daniel Carter looked around the chamber one last time. Then he said quietly, then the galaxy finds out why humans built the second plan. And that was the moment the Council realized something far more terrifying. The human defense grid was only Plan A. The Galactic Council watched the battle in complete silence. Across the hologram, the Sol system was burning with light. Thousands of human defense platforms fired constantly, filling space with beams of energy and gravity traps. Every few seconds, another Void Eater was slowed, trapped, or forced away from the star. But the swarm kept growing. More black machines drifted into the system like shadows, sliding out of deep space. One Council scientist whispered the numbers. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 machines. The insect diplomat's voice trembled. That defense wall cannot stop that many. Daniel Carter didn't argue that he simply watched the battle. One platform exploded. Then another. Small flashes of light spread across the defensive ring. The Cellari ambassador looked at Daniel. You said the wall would only slow them. Daniel nodded. Yes. The Varkal warlord stared at the timer. 17 hours. Then 16. More human stations were destroyed, but every second they bought time. Time for something else to prepare. Suddenly the hologram shifted that a new signal appeared near the outer edge of the Sol system. The enormous structure beyond Pluto. The trap. The Council watched as the giant machine slowly began to glow. Energy gathered around the massive ring. Stars in the background bent slightly as space itself started to twist. The insect diplomat whispered, the gateway is activating. Daniel finally spoke again. The trap is ready. The Cellari ambassador frowned. But the machines are attacking your star. How will you lure them that far out? Daniel pressed the device once more. A new image appeared. The Council gasped. The human fleet was moving. Hundreds of thousands of ships were leaving Earth's orbit. They moved in massive formations, spreading across the system. Warships, carriers, strange vessels built for a single purpose. The Varkal warlord leaned forward. You are sending your fleet directly toward them? Daniel nodded. Yes. The insect diplomat looked horrified. You cannot fight machines that consume stars. Daniel replied calmly. We're not trying to win. The Cellari ambassador slowly realized the plan. You are bait. Daniel gave a small nod. The human fleet accelerated. 300,000 ships moving together through the Sol system. They formed a line between the Void Eaters and the outer planets. The first machines reacted instantly. Several of them turned away from the defense wall, their massive black structures slowly rotating toward the human fleet. Energy gathered along their surfaces. Then they began to move, following the ships. The Council watched the chase begin. Human ships fired bright signals, drawing attention. Then they turned and fled toward the outer system, toward the trap. The insect diplomat whispered nervously. They're taking the bait. More machines changed direction. Hundreds of them now drifting after the human fleet. The defense wall behind them continued to fire, forcing even more of the swarm away from the star. Daniel watched carefully. More machines followed the fleet. Hundreds became thousands. The massive swarm slowly shifted course. Now they were moving deeper into the Sol system, toward the distant machine waiting in the dark. The Cellari ambassador asked quietly, how many must enter the trap for it to work? Daniel answered softly, all of them. The chase continued for hours, human ships constantly retreating, Void Eaters slowly following. The giant gateway in the outer system grew brighter every minute. Finally, the fleet reached at 300,000 ships, forming a wide circle around the glowing ring. The machines drifted closer, drawn by the massive energy source. The Council held their breath. Then the first Void Eater crossed the edge of the gateway field. Space twisted. Stars vanished behind it. Then the machine disappeared, gone. Insect diplomat whispered in shock. It worked. Another machine entered the gateway. Then 10th, then 100th, the swarm continued drifting forward. Thousands of ancient machines sliding into the glowing doorway, into the empty region of space beyond. Daniel watched the counter on his device. Almost all of them were inside, but suddenly the hologram flashpoint one machine stopped, then another. The swarm had begun to realize the trap. Several of the Void Eaters turned back toward the human fleet. Energy gathered across their dark surfaces. The Varkul warlord shouted, "They know." Daniel didn't panic. Instead, he gave one final command. All ships retreat. The human fleet instantly scattered away from the gateway. At the same moment, the giant ring began to collapse inward. Space around it twisted violently. The machines that had already passed through were gone forever. The ones outside the field tried to escape, but it was too late. The gateway snapped shut and a wave of distorted space rippled across the outer system. Then everything became still again. The swarm was gone. Thousands of Void Eaters trapped forever in a region of empty space with no stars to consume. The Sol system was safe. The council chamber remained silent. N01 moved. Finally, the Cellari ambassador spoke. Did you destroy them? Daniel shook his head. No, the insect diplomat asked quietly. Then what happens now? Daniel looked out the observation window again. The galaxy full of stars. They'll starve. The chamber stayed quiet for a long time. Then the Varkul warlord slowly began to laugh. Not mocking laughter. Not arrogant laughter. It was the sound of someone realizing they had completely misunderstood another species. You planned this for years. Daniel nodded. Yes. The Cellari ambassador looked at him carefully. And if the trap had failed? Daniel gave a small, tired smile. Then we would have used Plan C. The insect diplomat tilted its head. You mean evacuation? Daniel shook his head slowly. No, the council stared at him. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Then he said the words that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Plans, it was to teach the Void Eaters to fear us. The chamber went silent again, because in that moment, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy finally understood something. Humans weren't the strongest species. They weren't the oldest, but they were the only ones who had prepared for the end of everything. And when the darkness came for their star, humanity had already built a way to survive it.